With the rise of automotive content creators like Matt Armstrong overseas and our very own Mambo Repairs, there's been a fundamental cultural shift in how we see salvage cars. These guys are proving that with some know-how, determination and elbow grease, you can turn what was once considered scrap metal into your dream car. But here's the real question. Is it really that simple? Can you buy a wreck at auction, fix it up and end up driving your dream car at a fraction of the price? Or is it just a little too good to be true? Well, that's what we're going to find out in this video by following one of Mambo Repair's most iconic build, his Nissan GTR. To find out if rebuilding a crashed car of that caliber would be possible for normal people like you and me. And while we're unpacking that story, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about salvage cars, where to find them, and if they're good investment or just a massive migraine waiting to happen. According to this technical bulletin from the Vehicle Damage Quantification Governance Body of South Africa that I physically printed out because I am dramatic, there are 4 categories in which all motor vehicles in South Africa are put in. First up is Code 1. The definition here says a vehicle is classified as new after its first registration and licensing. So these are basically brand new cars that have been registered for the very first time. There is also this thing of a car being registered as dealer stock before it's officially registered to its first owner. Obviously, a car most of the time goes from the factory to the dealership, so it does have to be registered under the dealership in that short period while it is still in their possession before it is handed over to the new owner. But this is an exception. It says here that vehicles registered as dealer stock do not alter this status. So even if a brand new car was first registered to the dealership then to the new owner, does not change its status. It is still a Code 1 car. Right then, moving on to Code 2. The definition from the summary says a vehicle becomes used when registered as liable for licensing after being previously registered, deregistered or exempted from registration. So this is basically every single used car in South Africa. This also includes cars that have been in accidents and are deemed uneconomical to repair by the insurance, but we're going to get into the details of that when we move on to the other codes. It does get a bit complicated with cars being deemed uneconomical to repair by insurance but still being Code 2. We're going to get into that. Right now I'm just going to list all of the cars that are categorized under Code 2. Stolen cars that were recognized as being Code 2 before they were stolen, they also get put under Code 2 when they get re-registered, because obviously when a car gets stolen it's going to get deregistered. Then when it gets re-registered again, it's going to be a Code 2 car if it was a Code 2 car before it got stolen. But the biggest thing with Code 2 cars, which is what I said I would explain, is that even if a car is deemed uneconomical to repair by the insurance, and even if a car has like structural damage, a serious crash, as long as the car can be repaired back to manufacturer specifications, it will still fall under Code 2. The most important part there is that it is repaired back to manufacturer specifications. So it is repaired back to the state that it was in before the crash. It will fall under Code 2. So this includes cars that have been damaged, crashed, and that have been repaired back to OEM spec using OEM or close to OEM parts. Those cars go under Code 2 even if they've been crashed and maybe the insurance wrote it off. As long as it is repaired back to what it was before the crash, still a Code 2 car. Moving on to Code 3 or built up cars. This is the definition. Code 3 vehicles are those that have been involved in severe accidents, are unfit for use as originally intended, but can be rebuilt to a roadworthy condition. Let's explain what that means. So Code 3 cars are cars that have been damaged so badly that that damage deems them unfit for use as a motor vehicle. So these are cars that are in a very bad state. They're so messed up that they are literally said to not be able to be used as a motor vehicle anymore. But let's continue unpacking Code 3 cars and see what we can find out about that, about them being deemed unfit for use as motor vehicles. So then Code 3 cars, although they are considered not fit for use as motor vehicles anymore when they crash. If you repair them back to a roadworthy condition, you can still register them under Code 3. These are cars that cannot be repaired back to OEM specifications, but can still be repaired back to a roadworthy condition. So they're safe to use on the roads. It's just that they won't be the original car anymore. Basically, the damage is so badly that it's impossible to repair them back to the OEM spec. So basically, these are cars that are damaged so badly that they need serious chassis repairs. And obviously, once you get to the point where you're cutting up the chassis, there is no way that that car can be OEM anymore. So it is then classed as Code 3 or built up. There's also another category of Code 3 cars called Code 3A or spare parts only cars. Let's read the summary of those and explain them. So these are vehicles that are permanently unfit for use and cannot be made roadworthy, but whose parts can be salvaged for resale. Let's unpack that. These are cars that are damaged so badly that they literally cannot be repaired at all. They can only have their parts stripped off of them to build other cars. This means that number one, the car cannot be repaired back to a roadworthy state, and number two, its chassis is damaged so badly that that chassis itself cannot be built up into another car using spare parts. So yeah, these are basically all of your parts cars that cannot be repaired back to a roadworthy condition. So then once all of these salvageable parts have been stripped off of that car, any part of that car that contain VIN information about the car, like VIN stamps on the chassis and stuff like that, it must be destroyed because that car has been written off. It's not gonna come back on the road. So the chassis and anywhere that contains that car's VIN number must be destroyed after it is stripped off. Let's move on to the final code. So then, this is Code 4 or permanently demolished cars. The definition says, vehicles classified as permanently demolished are those that have been destroyed to an extent where they cannot be repaired or used. Right, let's unpack that. So these are cars that have been permanently demolished, meaning that they have either been compacted, compressed, or melted. Not even our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ could bring such cars back. So let's not waste too much time on this category. These are cars that you genuinely just can't bring back. They're just scrap metal at that point. So yes, those are all of the SAIA salvage codes, which can be a bit difficult to wrap your head around, but I hope my little breakdown here cleared a lot of those things up for you.
I know I enjoyed it for a very high price with the world's cheapest crash damage.
So then, first thing Mambo Repairs does in the video is something I would definitely not recommend, something I'll get into a bit later on, but he buys the car sight unseen.
Got it! Yo! We got the GTR.
After bidding on the car and after having to presumably pay for the car, he then goes to inspect it. And like what always happens with these accident damaged cars, there is always just way more damage beneath the surface. He finds way more damage than he anticipated when he initially looked at the pictures of the car on GoBid. The particular damage is on the right front suspension and the 40,000 Rand carbon fiber front cradle. So yeah, this is what happens when you buy a crash damaged car sight unseen. You will have those ugly surprises. But yeah, progressing on with the video, he goes to Nissan to get a quote for the parts that he thinks he's going to need. Nissan tells him that those parts are going to cost 200,000 Rand. Now keep in mind, this is not all the parts that is going to need. This is just what he saw before he stripped the car, so he was kind of just guesstimating. And yeah, 200,000 Rand quotes from Nissan. And once he actually gets the car to his workshop and starts stripping it apart, he finds even more damage that he did not anticipate, this being structural damage, something that could potentially derail the entire project, and something that you obviously would not see without stripping the car. One of the risks of buying a crash damaged car sight unseen, even if you go and inspect it, those are just the risk of buying a crash damaged car in general, is that you don't know what is beneath the surface. But yeah, let's now move on with our video. We're gonna come back to Mambo Repairs a bit later on. Let's now find out how you can find a salvage car in South Africa. If you're looking for a wrecked project car to rebuild, there are a range of salvage car platforms that you can peruse through to find your dream car. If you know a wrecked car is a dream of yours. So platforms like SMD, GoBid, City Deep Auto, and Hallmark Auto offer a wide variety of salvage cars that you can either bid on or buy outright. Majority of these platforms also offer you the option to physically inspect the car before you buy it, which kind of doesn't matter when buying a crash damaged car. There's just certain stuff that you're never going to see on your initial inspection. There are certain things that you only see once you get the car up on a lift and start stripping it apart. So this kind of doesn't matter, but it's nice, I guess. It gives you a bit of peace of mind, I guess. Ace Auto Salvage is also a very good way to buy and rebuild damaged cars, which is helped by the fact that they also sell spare parts, so the entire process is made a lot easier if you buy a car through them. But if you're not looking to build up a car on your own and you're looking to buy a crash damaged car that has been repaired and then is getting sold to you at a discounted offer, which is something I would not recommend, but we'll get into that later. You can just go back to the platforms I just listed and look for built up cars on those platforms. You should be able to find them. Now, obviously, these are a bit more risky considering that you don't know who built that car up and you don't know to what standard that car was built up. But if you're already shopping around for crash damaged cars, you're not exactly risk averse anyway, so yeah, might as well just go ahead. We will be talking about everything that you need to look out for when buying a salvage car, but for now, that is everything you need to know about buying your first salvage car.
The plan didn't work. It took me a hell of a lot of time.
So we're about an hour into the Mambo Repairs GTR video. At this point, he has the entire front of the car assembled. I think the only thing missing was the front bumper, but all of the parts that needed to go on were on the car. And something very interesting happens that we can learn a lot from, especially if you want to rebuild a car yourself. Mambo, a seasoned mechanic, one of the best mechanic, probably the best mechanic on South African YouTube, proceeds to spend hours trying to find the mounting point for the crash sensors on the front.
But when it came to these crash sensors, I could not figure it out.
A seasoned mechanic spending hours trying to find something that was just in the front bumper. That just highlights the just little dumb things that can cause so much time delay when you're dealing with a project like this. Even a seasoned mechanic, someone who works on cars day in and day out, struggling, spending hours searching for something that was quite obvious to be honest, but because he's not familiar with this particular platform, because he's never worked on a Nissan GTR before, takes him so much longer than someone who was a seasoned vet, for example. So something very important to keep in mind there with rebuilding these crash damaged cars. If you're not that mechanically inclined or you don't have that much experience renting on cars, it's going to take you a lot of time. But after that little kerfuffle, he puts the car back together and it starts right up. Someone who has never worked on a GTR before stripped the front of it completely apart, put it back together, and it worked like normal. It just goes to show how much skill this guy has to take on such a big challenge with kind of like an exotic car like that. Take it apart, put it back together, and have it running again. It's not something that any normal person can do. So kudos to Mambo for that. But yeah, at this point, he just needed to get the airbag sorted for the car. The car needed to be resprayed on the front. It needed a 40,000 rand headlight, 40,000 rand headlight, and bonnet airbags that were 8,000 rand a piece. Very expensive car to repair. But yes, let's continue with our video where we will talk about if you should buy yourself a salvage car and all of the things that you need to take into consideration when shopping around for a salvage car in this country. I mean, it'd be fairly useless to buy a code 3A or code 4 car that literally legally cannot be repaired back to a roadworthy condition. So make sure you do your homework on that and know that the car you're buying is actually legally repairable. Along with inspecting the paperwork with the car and knowing the status of it, you also need to physically inspect the car itself very thoroughly. You need to know stuff like if the engine was left on after maybe the oil pan cracked, or if the chassis is bent in any kind of way. Make sure you bring a specialist with you who can catch on to such things. But like I said before, they can be quite difficult to see initially when you haven't stripped the car off. But if you have a specialist with you, someone who knows what they're talking about in terms of rebuilding crash damaged cars, then you do reduce the chances of you buying an absolute piece of work. Just make sure you know the size of the mountain that you've decided to start climbing. And one of the most important considerations is the budget. Ask yourself if you have enough guap to see this entire project through, because parts, labor and storage costs add up very quickly and can cripple you if you're not careful. The general rule of thumb in terms of budgets is to take the initial amount of money that was in your head, the initial figure, and double it. That way the money that you have should cover everything for the project. Nakona mhlawumbe, maybe. You also probably won't be able to find any insurance company willing to insure your project after you're done building it up. So also be ready for that. A lot goes into re-registering a car after it's been built up. So make sure that it is built up to a standard where it will hold up against very strict roadworthy testing to make sure that you can actually register it. And finally, you probably will not find anyone who is willing to buy your little project, not for anywhere near what you put into it. So make sure you are emotionally prepared for that. And what helps with that is that you do not go into it thinking you're going to make a profit. Make sure if you're buying a salvage car, it is a passion project. It is a dream car that has been made more attainable to you, although it probably is going to end up being more expensive than just buying the car outright. But make sure it's a passion project. Do not go into this trying to make profit. You will get burned. Now that you've taken a look at what you need to take into consideration when you buy a car to build up, let's now look at what you need to take into consideration when you want to buy a car that has already been rebuilt. First thing you want to do is run a history check on the car and make sure it is not a code 3A or code 4 car. You can do this with platforms like TransUnion and Auto DNA. Just make sure you know what you're buying and make sure you inspect the car thoroughly with an expert. I cannot stress this point enough. Make sure you inspect the car thoroughly. Failure to do this inspection thoroughly enough could literally cost you your life or the lives of those you love the most. So make sure that you get the car thoroughly inspected so that you know that the repair job wasn't a botch job. Make sure you have the car's status documentations, a valid roadworthy certificate and police clearance so that you are not stuck with a car that 12 months down the line you can't re-register. And once again, like with the project, insurance is going to be a bit difficult, so make sure that you are ready for a boatload of phone calls. If you haven't read between the quite obvious lines that I've drawn here, I would not recommend buying a rebuilt car. I personally would not touch a rebuilt car with a 10-meter long stick, but if that's what you've convinced yourself is a good move, to each their own, I guess. But yeah, I would definitely not recommend this. I would not recommend this. But yeah, that is all the considerations that you need to keep in mind when you want to buy yourself a rebuilt car or when you want to rebuild a car yourself.
Because, like, look at this, it's not sitting properly.
So at this point, we're at the final stretch of the project. It turns out that Mambo needed a 50,000 Rand brand new front bumper because the front bumper that he bought second hand actually turned out to be damaged, and the way they repaired it was a bit of a botch job. So pieces like the front splitter couldn't fit back in. He had to splurge on a new bumper when he already had a second-hand bumper that he had spent money on. One thing to also be very careful of when it comes to the second-hand market is stuff like this can happen. You can actually buy damaged parts that just force you to throw more money into the project. But after that, after he got the new bumper on the car got resprayed and it was done. It was complete. So now let's go over the numbers. I'm not going to go into all the details of how much he spent on each part. That's for you to find out by watching this excellent 2-hour long video by Mambo Repairs. A really nice video. I actually enjoyed watching this video in research for this one. But yeah, the winning bid for the GTR was 725,000 rands. This was before all of the fees that are associated with auctions. After fees, the total was closer to 880,000 rands for a crash damaged car. He then spent around 400,000 rands in parts, bringing the total for this build to 1,185,000 rand. Now, considering as Mambo Repairs went over in the video that similar cars on the used market go for about 1.7 million rand, around about 1.2 million rand for the complete build is not bad at all. That is 500,000 rands in savings. Yes, it is a crash damaged car, but it is still a code 2 car. It was structural damage that was repairable, something that Mambo Repairs actually goes over in the video. So he's still going to be able to sell it back to dealerships as a normal used car. Yes, they're going to run their checks and find out it was fixed and all of that palaver, but still, it is still a code 2 car, so technically still a normal used car. He could technically somehow get that 1.6 million rand for the car. So yeah, an incredibly fun watch. This was a really enjoyable video to watch and a really educational one as well. This video shined a lot of light for me on the experience of what it's like to actually rebuild one of these cars, you know, except the fact that I don't have a spare 1.3 or 1.2 million rands to spend on fixing a GTR. A lot of the principles, a lot of the stuff that we learned from this video can be applied to you buying yourself your next salvage car project. So in conclusion of this video, let's answer the question of whether or not you should actually buy a crash damaged car. And my answer to that is hell no. No, don't. Just don't. It's a bad idea through and through. See, unless it is a passion project like Mambo here, this GTR was a passion project. Yes, it could theoretically be profitable, but the amount of money that Mambo spent to make sure that the car was done and was done right can only be an amount of money that comes from the heart. So if you want to buy a salvage car and fix it up and flip it, that's not gonna happen. I would not recommend you doing that, number one. And number two, if you want to buy a car that was crash damaged then fixed up by someone that you don't even know, that's also a bad idea. You're putting yourself at risk. Even if it's a code 2 car, you really are not sure about a car that's been crash damaged and then fixed up by people that you're not sure of. Just don't put yourself and your family in unnecessary risk by buying a crash damaged car. But for a fun little project, for something where you could potentially own your dream car for a discounted price, you could go ahead and try getting yourself a salvage car. But for the normal consumer, just stick to the normal used market. There's already a lot of negative stuff going on the used market, so you don't want to add crashed used markets on top of that. And yeah, that was it for the video. Until the next one, goodbye.